we should. I wanted to ask you about what is that idea you just had earlier? Meta modernist.
No, not meta-modernist. Meta-modernist is actually a term that people are using for like the next step in the modern
Oh, meta moderate.
because meta-modernism is the next step from modernism
Modernist,
to postmodern
postmodern,
to
and meta.
and how people are saying meta or post-postmodernist. There's like a couple different phrases people are throwing out. No, meta-moderate, which is basically
It kind of sounds like meta moderate fits right in there with meta modernist.
yeah, but it's totally different. Only because I don't really know what like they mean by the next step after postmodernism. So I think people are still figuring out like what that even means.
Yeah.
But
I would imagine it's the people who are responding to critics of.
yeah, I mean that's what postmodernism was to modernism. But I'm not really sure. Some people are saying like really they're just going back to modernism. So like you don't have to call it by some new name because you're just going back to what it was.
It's modernism responding back to postmodernism.
Yeah. But no, meta moderate. Because there's like moderates, like there's political moderates, which is essentially just someone who's not liberal or conservative or not Democrat or Republican. You're in the middle.
Right in the middle.
And this like new wave of ideas, this like new wave of how people are viewing things, is like there's some form of moderate, but they're not really. They're like something above it. There's something above, like in between and above, the left and the right. They're coming at it from a whole different angle. Because if you just go in between it, you're still kind of in that mess of it, and it doesn't, and that's not really how people are. Like it's just not nuanced enough.
Yeah. Oh, okay, and that's why I brought up why I thought it sounded like progressive.
Yeah, I mean progressive is.
But progressive already has.
It's kind of already gotten a bad name.
Yeah.
Just because of like certain people, like like mostly like radical liberals, like they take the progressive moniker.
Yeah. And what entails a progressive now, anyway?
I mean, progressive was originally just supposed to mean like you're into like the
moving forward.
Yeah, the progression of like humanity, like some open-minded form of
as
humanism
opposed
or
to
something.
Conservative.
Yeah. But it was supposed to be more like intellectual, but it just didn't end up that way. Maybe the first progressives were, but they kind of fell off.
I feel like that tends to be what happens with like the spread of education, right? Because the first progressives, like you said, probably had like good intentions.
Yeah.
And then there's the following wave who have just a little bit of education.
Yeah.
And they hear a little bit of the ideas coming from
and they say, "Oh, I'm a
progressive," and then they like it, and they're like, "Yeah," and they identify with that.
But they didn't actually learn anything.
They don't fully understand.
Yeah, that's probably exactly what happened. And the other thing was, I've noticed that like there's a lot of like defenders of conservatism these days, like people defending people like Ben Shapiro who go to colleges and they get like rioted off campus before they can even talk, and I think that's crazy too. I understand the defense, but it's kind of weird. Like there's this idea of like it's hard. This is why I think it's above just being a moderate. It's beyond just being a moderate because it is so nuanced. Like there's people like Jordan Peterson who you're like, okay, like everything he says, like I'm for, and like he's thinking about things, and so and then you'll go to say Ben Shapiro, and you're like, yeah, like he's has his own ideas, and like they're not like, you know, they're definitely conservative, and then but he's a smart guy, and he's like trying to figure it out, but then and I don't want to use him as an example because I don't really know his views that well, but there are people like him who are still smart people, but and and you're like, yeah, um, like he's like they're smart people, and they're just trying to figure it out, and they have their own ideas, and but then they'll say something like yeah, but uh, gay people shouldn't be married or something like that. You know what I mean? And then it's like, okay, wait a minute.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's like how far like that's clearly like they're clearly not thinking about it because that doesn't make any sense. Like who gives a shit? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it just certain things like that where I understand the defense of like I'm starting to think that the people that were defending for like being conservatives, they're not really conservatives because it's like, oh well, I'm a conservative, but I believe in gay marriage, I believe in like all these, you know, liberal open-minded ideas,
Yeah.
and it's like, wait a minute, you're not really conservative then.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like same with like Jordan Peterson, like he's not a conservative, no matter how many conservatives try to brand him as one.
Yeah.
And no matter how many liberals try to brand him as one, he's just not. Like that's just not what a conservative is. You know what I mean? Like it's he has
It's a one-track mind kind of thing because that's all they know is like left
yeah,
or right.
and that's what I mean about the ideas being so nuanced because yeah, he makes a couple noises that you could kind of see as conservative only because the only thing you have to contrast it with is radical liberals. So you say, okay, well, if he's not liberal, then he's got to be conservative, or at the very least, moderate. So then, that's why I say, no, he's still a liberal, or he's still on this side, but he's above it, you know? Because like the problem right now that we're having, as a society is, and the reason why there's so much division is because if you're not conservative, you're liberal. If you're not liberal, you're conservative. But that's not true. Or like and if you're moderate, then you're just in the middle of conservative and liberal. You know what I mean? But that's not really how it is. You know what I mean? Like you can, like I said, I would consider Peterson, Harris, extremely liberal. Like really, you know what I mean? Like they're extremely liberal in their ideas. They're just their ideas are just more nuanced. Like what is really going on here, you know? So that's why I like the term like meta-moderate. You're a meta-moderate. Meta-moderate intellectual, I guess.
Yeah. I feel like the misinterpretation of the moderate party or moderate side or whatever is probably inherent to the idea that things can only happen like in two ways for the most part in
Like
society.
black and white.
Yeah, exactly. Like if you're not this side, then it's that side.
Well, for certain ideas, it's like, because with a lot of their ideas, that is how they frame it. So, like, for like take gay marriage, either you're okay with it and you're liberal, or you're not okay with it and pretty much anything else than being okay with it, no matter what it is. So it's not even that there's two categories, but it's just if you're not this, then anything else that you could be, you're conservative. And same with like certain like ideas, conservative ideas, like the big one nowadays is like gun laws, you know,
Yeah.
like if you're not for guns totally, than anything else. Like, not that there's only two options, but anything but being for them completely. And you're liberal now. You know what I mean? Like, I mean, that's kind of how they're viewing it through that. They're framing it that way.
Yeah.
Because they're basically saying it. Not that there's only two options, but if you haven't picked this option, then you're the other side. No matter what a million other options there are that are in between. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it just can't. We can't. We can't be framing things that way. Well, and the other thing is, it's been, those two parties have gained so much power over the years, and that there's really no other way to win in elections. So it's not even that you have to. You kind of have to, no matter what your views are, you kind of have to force yourself into one of those two holes if you want to have a chance. You know, like there's very few independents that are elected. Like very few people that would admit to not being Republican or Democrat.
And have you seen the protests
About guns?
Yeah.
That girl Emma Gonzalez, you know? She's
that's what I was gonna ask about, because I haven't seen anything about it, but I've heard a whole lot about it.
The Parkland students. It's the girl.
I guess so.
Yeah. So the ones that were like the survivors of the school shooting, and the main one is Emma Gonzalez. Has a shaved head. And she's the one that's been like leading the like student survivor movement, and she's like made a name for herself. And I hate to like think in these terms or whatever, but she's probably pretty set now for life.
Yeah?
Yeah, I think so. I know that she's gotten an insane amount of donations, and not only that, but like she's in the system now. Like she's in like the public sphere. So unless, and I'm not saying that this is her motivation.
Yeah.
Although being her age, I'm sure that it doesn't hurt. You know what I mean? Like, it must be nice to at that age, you're not even out of high school, and you know, like, oh, okay, like I'm famous now, and I'm doing pretty well. You know what I mean? Like, I'm sure that doesn't hurt. To as far as motivation to continue doing what she's doing.
I do want to know, because I was gonna ask. What are they trying to get at with their protests?
They want gun control.
They want gun control. Like, how heavy of gun control? They're pushing, because I remember they were pushing for like more background checks. Or are they trying to ban guns altogether?
Honestly, no, I don't think so. But like, honestly, and like, this is like what the conservative media has been pushing so hard, like Fox News, and I fucking hate Fox News, but they've been pushing like they're just kids, they don't really know any, like their views just, and like they've been pushing that, and like I said, I hate Fox News, but they really don't, like they really don't know what they want, you know what I mean? Like they just don't know enough about. I mean, imagine when I was in high school, I didn't know anything. Like nothing. Like their understanding of these topics is, it's not that it isn't there, it's just shallow, you know? Like there's no way that they know enough, they've learned enough, absorbed enough data.
Well, from there, I would ask, do you think, because these are kids who were involved in the problem.
Yeah. Like,
I would wonder what, for anybody who does have a view that's like, you guys don't have enough background or like knowledge on the subject to be speaking on anything about like legislation. What would be maybe a better way for the kids to be going about it?
There is no way, because they're just too young. like they'll never, at that age, you just don't know enough to know. Like, you know, what they could be doing is, like, you know, talking to, like, public intellectuals and, like, doing that and, like, using their newfound fame to, like, organize, like, um, discussions and debates and, like, conferences with people that do know these issues really well and are really smart.
Yeah.
But I mean, that's what they could do, but they're too young to even know that, you know? Like, they're too young to even know that that's, like, a way to go about it, you know? Like...
And I wonder if maybe that is what's happening. Because they have brought, like, this thing is, like, super big right now. Like, and I don't even pay attention to the news like that, but, like, I catch things here and there. Like, I just went to go check on my Facebook the other day, and, like, it was all over the timeline.
Yeah.
I was like, damn, this thing is pretty big.
But it's not just them, by the way. Most people don't know what they want.
Yeah.
Like, most people don't know how to fix the problem. Like, the fact is...
No, it takes, like, an understanding of social studies and...
Yeah, I mean, I barely do. The fact is, the United States has more guns than any other country times 10, and more mass murders than any other country times 10, and... more mental health problems than any other country times 10, and it's just a developed country, that is. All of those were about developed countries.
Yeah.
And like, rescinding the Second Amendment and making guns illegal is definitely not the answer, because that's just not going to work. Like, we can't undo what's already been done. Like, there are just too many that are out there. Like, we'd have to, like, impose martial law and go door to door and, like, literally be like, we need to look through your house so we can find them. You know what I mean? Like, there's that, it would take a massive effort, and there would be massive pushback. Like, you just can't take the guns. It just, people won't let you, you know? So that's not going to happen. And then,
I think I remember the conversation was that a little while back. I think it was was it the theater shooting? I forget when it was, but it wasn't too far away ago that people were fighting to just ban guns outright altogether. And at least to me, this seems like kind of this seems kind of productive. Not kind of productive, like, on the part of the people who are, like, pushing for better legislation on gun control, because that's a leap from where they were trying to go last time. Just trying to... Do you remember that? Am I remembering wrong?
No,
they were trying to ban guns altogether, right?
No, I think you're remembering. I think that I know that at least people were talking about that, and. And I understand that. You know, you ask big, and then you can negotiate to something lower. But which I think probably normally works. But in this specific issue, no one wants to get. I mean, the gun owners don't want to give an inch. You know what I mean? Like, they really don't. Like, they just.
I would wonder who exactly would be identifying as gun owners too, because, like, a big part from at least what little I've been gathering about this whole debate is, like, the big voice for the proponents of guns has been the NRA, and they have, like, this whole thing surrounding them too now. Like,
yeah, they do. But the NRA is crazy.
Yeah.
Like, I'm not even...
they were a part of that big discussion that they just aired the other day, right?
Yeah. And they're hardcore. But they're almost cult-like, the NRA.
Yeah, and that's why it's so interesting that they keep involving them in the discussion for it.
Well, it's because they have a lot of control over like they're a strong lobby.
Yeah.
You know,
and they're also in the public eye, so they're like they have an influence, and the voice, whatever it is, starts mimicking that voice.
Yeah. I mean, it's a weird issue. It's a weird issue because it's being talked about as if like we can't have mass shootings when really, I mean, first of all, the United States has more mass shootings than any other developed country. But second of all, even so, that number's still not that high. Like the real problem is gun violence on other fronts, you know, like gun violence in the streets and stuff like that.
Yeah, that's true. Mass shootings aren't really that.
There's just not there's not enough for the numbers, and they just don't kill enough people for it to be
as big as they make it out to be.
Yeah, just because it's such a dramatic event, you know, and it's not that, especially when it's kids. Of course it's important to stop. Like, it's not that it's not worth stopping, but I think that the issue is deeper.
Yeah, it definitely is. And this relates back to the whole, I don't know if we brought it up in this conversation. Did we start talking about the whole masculine upkeep or gender roles or whatever? Like the problem facing men in Western society? Well, I think this is a good time to like get into that, because that is, at least in my view, part of the whole problem.
What?
Like the individual problem leading into the males in Western society trying to uphold these, I don't know, masculine laws or whatever.
As far in what way? Like be
a man.
Like but what? So like be a man, own a gun?
Be a man, and whatever comes with being a man. So whatever you can think of that comes to mind when people say that. Be a man. Stay strong. Don't cry. Don't show emotions. The only emotion that you can show, if you need to show any, is anger.
But there certainly are evolutionary causes for that. There is like evolutionary correlations to
why we are in the situation that we are,
to the social constructs of masculine, feminine.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like it's not just that society says be a man, and that's why that men act like that.
Yeah, it's a circular thing, because they see how men usually are. Right. And then the thinking part of society sees how they usually are and says,
and it ingrains that
this is how you should be.
Yeah, it's like a feedback loop.
Yeah. Whereas like that just becomes a generalization now.
Yeah. An accurate one, but a generalization nonetheless.
Yeah. Well, how accurate? Because the reason why we say it's a generalization.
Well, generalization doesn't. It just means it's in general.
Yeah, and.
So in general, guys are that way.
Yeah.
That's all I mean by the accurate.
Yeah. So
like if you take all guys and you look at these different characteristics, it's something like, whatever, 85% or 90%, have that. Or 85% have this, and
then it gets to the part where they start associating other things with what's biologically there. So evolutionarily men are this way, and then by association you shouldn't express your emotions. You shouldn't be crying.
Right.
But does evolution make us like that? By evolution, you shouldn't be crying.
Well, I would say by evolution we tend towards being
more
emotionally
aggressive,
reserved, and aggressive, like being more emotionally stoic.
Yeah.
Just because
but that's where it seems the mix-up starts to happen, because some guys hear this is how men usually are, and they're like, okay, I need to be a man. I should always be like this. It starts getting taken to the extreme.
Yeah.
And then that starts circulating throughout society. That's the whole thing. We talked about it before the episode started. I'm gonna turn this thing off. It's fucking me up. Before the whole thing started, and it relates back to some of the cultures that uphold that whole thing of masculinity.
And you know what? I also think that it's not. This is actually tough. This is tough to articulate. So, I also think that the way that we have constructed the generalizations of masculinity are too specific for how vague they actually are. So let me give an example. A man is supposed to be aggressive and take control of the situation, like that type of thing.
Yeah.
So you look at a football player and a nerd, right? And the one society looks at and says that's a man, the football player clearly, and then the other one society, and probably that dude's dad, is like, what the fuck, like my son's a pussy. When in reality, in the nerd's group, he does do that. Like, he intellectually shows his dominance. He does. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So really, the dominance, the showing of dominance, we have pigeonholed that as
this
physically,
certain sense,
set of
characteristics.
Well, in a certain taking that in a certain sense. So like the physical sense, instead of whatever, like the evolutionary aspect of that is actually far more vague. Like you don't necessarily need to be like a huge strong guy that like wants to get in fights to be showing the same male dominance. So it's just that in our society, that's what we've decided it is. And I think that is the same for a lot of different characteristics.
Yeah.
Where we've just gone too specific with them as far as what we consider to be like the ideal masculine.
Yeah.
When really it's whatever those characteristics are in a much vaguer sense, in a much wider sense that incorporates, because otherwise it what people say, which is like, oh, this generation, like there's no real men left type of thing, or whatever people say, that would actually be true. But that doesn't make sense, because how it couldn't have just fallen out of our DNA.
Yeah.
Like it's certainly not that quick, It must still be there somewhere. It's just that we're looking for it in a very specific sense.
Yeah.
And it expresses itself in multiple ways.
Yeah, perception is definitely... It's weird. Perception kind of, at least societal perception, still keeps itself in the same way it used to look at things way back when. That's why they keep saying stuff like all the real men have gone, or whatever you just said.
Right, yeah.
Because they're still thinking about how it used to be. But with the way things are progressing now, like, things are way too different, and they're happening way more quickly than societal perception is able to keep up with. And all this talk of masculinity and the way it affects societal structure is kind of leading back to just the whole thing with the gun control debate and like just guns in Western society, or maybe even just America, because who are the people that are using the guns and causing all of this? Right? You get what I'm saying?
Yeah. Well, who are the people that are actually killing people?
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know.
It's men.
Either. Well, it's always men.
It's only ever men.
Yeah. That's true.
And you just connect this back to everything we just talked about. It's definitely evolutionary, but it's also societal structure that's upkeeping that. The only way men, like the law about you're not supposed to be showing your emotion. Well, how am I supposed to be showing my emotion?
I think it depends on what type of gun violence you're talking about. So the mass shootings, I think that you're right. It is only men, and I think that does have something to do with it. Oh, I mean, of course it does, because it really is only men. But it has something to do with it in a different way, because like those people are psychologically broken in some way. Like those people have lost it a little bit, for whatever reason.
Yeah, and I only brought up the men thing as just like a piece of it, but relating back to what you were saying about how there's a lack of understanding of the deep social structures that are actually at play with things relating to legislation on gun control.
But I would argue that gun violence on the streets is almost entirely because of the like masculine tendency, because that's 100% like
because of what?
Masculine tendency.
Oh,
that's 100% like a show of dominance. Yeah. Like in gang violence and that type of thing. Like that's just, you know what I mean? Like you wronged me, so I have to show you that I'm not going to take that.
Yeah.
Type or whatever, you know what I mean? So that's like that's all masculine.
Yeah, and even if you take away the guns, just like
something
having like anything to do with your pride in general. If ever somebody gets offended.
Absolutely. And the only reason I say that's a different, because it's weird, because obviously masculinity has something to do with the mass shootings too, because it's only men.
Yeah.
If it had nothing to do with it, then it would be women too, So clearly it does have something to do with it, but it's just whatever it has to do with it, it's in a different way. Because, I mean, maybe it's not. Maybe those people's pride has just been like crushed to the point of psychosis.
Yeah.
And so instead of a show of dominance, it's just a show of insanity. Because their pride has been so crumbled. I mean, those kids never, like, it's never someone who's like really popular and they're like, you know what, this is all bullshit, I'm just gonna kill everybody.
Yeah.
No one does that. Like, it's someone who had no friends ever, or always. It's always someone who never had any friends.
Yeah.
They were total losers. And
this is something that Peterson also touches on too. Like he brings up having read I think it was the diaries of the Columbine shooters.
Yeah.
And how one of them was more literate than the other. Like he was doing most of the writing, and it shows like an insight into his mind of what was going on there before the whole thing. And he was a guy that was questioning everything. And it's an interesting way that Peterson goes about piecing that together with the problem with males in society, because of what men feel like they have to uphold for society, and them connecting that to their individuality, and it just becomes this whole clusterfuck of, if you don't grow up and get past that stage of trying to figure shit out, you start to become angry, and there's only like a few pathways for you to go after a certain point.
I think that I just realized what the masculinity aspect is. And it's because now I'm starting to think that it really that femininity that there is, that it's the same, it's just manifesting differently. So the reason that all the shooters are men is because men, that pain in men manifests as violence towards others, right? But in girls, and this actually happens probably more often than men, but in girls, it manifests as violence towards themselves. So the female Columbine kids, the female Parkland kids, Parkland shooter, they kill themselves. They don't go and kill everybody else. Do you know what I'm saying? So it's not that it's not that only men feel the amount of pain that it takes to go kill people. It's that it's more that females have more of a tendency to turn that pain inward instead of outward.
Yeah. Yeah. That makes sense. Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So you get girls that either that commit suicide or self-harm.
Yeah.
Which is extremely common these days in schools, in high school. You know what I mean?
There's also an interesting statistic on that one too, because apparently, and I forget where I read this, but like as much suicides, like, and there's a difference between male suicides and female suicides. I think there are more women that try suicide,
but more men who complete it.
Yeah.
Because they once if they make the decision, they made the decision. They're not
second guessing themselves,
and they're usually not going the cry for help road. Like they're
because that road's not open to them. Like they've gotten boxed in.
Yeah. That's true. That's interesting. That's true. They.
Yeah, like who are you gonna go to? Society's telling you don't be
a pussy.
Yeah, fucking do. What's that fucking? Do a flip.
Yeah.
What was that in?
I forget.
Oh shit, whatever.
But yeah, that's true. They so when they so the only place they can go, when they can't even do the call for help, suicide. They just have to do the suicide.
Yeah.
Like that's not even an option for them.
Yeah, and that's interesting. It either becomes they're able to kill themselves, or even worse, if they're able to kill everybody and themselves.
Imagine how ingrained that societal construct has to be, to where, I mean, what do you have to lose? Like, what at that point when it's like, okay, either I'm gonna just say fuck society and look like a pussy and go for help, or I'm gonna kill everyone I can and myself, or just kill myself. They choose to kill themselves, or kill people in themselves instead. Like, even at that point of desperation, where you'd think that most people would be like, okay, if I'm a pussy, I'm a pussy, but like I'm gonna kill myself if I don't do anything else. Most people will just be like, I'm gonna kill myself, I guess. That's pretty crazy. Like, that's how ingrained that construct of like masculine expression of emotions is.
Yeah, it is crazy. That Peterson brings up another example of that whole masculine thing popping up, and it's within those who are like the sociopath killers. It's this one guy who was only raping men, but he grew up in the foster care system, and he got fucked up in there, and he just went out and like fucked up the world. Like I think he was burning down houses, he was killing people.
Now these mass shooters are not sociopaths. Certainly not. I'm saying in general, like the Columbine kids and those are not sociopaths.
Yeah.
Like it's a complete opposite. Like they're in deep pain. Like they're you know what I'm saying? Like they're not like hollow, soulless, like sadistic. Like they're acting out their anger.
Yeah.
Like a sociopath is someone who like can't connect to humans in any sense, and they just get pleasure from hurting people, you know. But like so the sociopaths are the real human predators. You know, they're the predators of the human species.
There's this piece in the book by Goleman on emotional intelligence where and he speaks on sociopaths too. It's a piece where starting from birth, the level of reception a kid gains from his parents, mainly his mother, depending on how much he receives, really affects how he goes about society. If he's not receiving some level of reception in emotion, like the mother being attentive to how the kid is feeling, as opposed to seeing it but not reacting to it at all, like how some moms will just see the face of a kid and the kid smiles, and the mom is able to react like the kid too.
I know one sociopath like in my life, and his mother was actually great. She was like he had a great childhood, but she was very cold. You know, like very like almost always professional. Yeah. And like, you know what I'm saying? Like, and like that makes sense. You know what I mean? Like, so it wasn't even like, it's not like he had a bad childhood where like she was out drinking.
Yeah,
or, like
he probably didn't have he really probably didn't have a bad childhood. It was just the mom didn't know how to. The
emotional aspect of it wasn't there.
Yeah.
Like the loving, like the nurturing wasn't there. Like the emotional nurturing.
Yeah.
You know, like he never went without. He always had good Christmases, all that. But that part wasn't there.
Yeah, and it's interesting, dude.
You could see the result. You know. He was a crazy person.
I relate that back. I don't feel like any of my circumstances were ever to the extreme of making me like
sociopathic.
Yeah. Let's hope that holds true. But I can recall some instances where like I can see. Yeah. I remember there was this girl back in high school who I liked, and she would do this. She would look into, and she did this with other guys who I think she knew had crushes on her, and she would look into your eyes and then like look away. Like it was that game.
Yeah.
And Goleman also brings up the same
eye contact
experiment too. A mom doing this with her twins. One of her twins, she says, is more like her, and the other twin is more like the dad. And the one that's more like the dad, she does the eye game with that twin.
Yeah.
Where she looks that twin in the eye and looks away, and looks the twin in the eye, and the twin looks at her but then looks away. But then it starts becoming more quick where she looks at him and he looks away.
Yeah.
He tries to catch her and she looks away.
Yeah.
And then it gets to the point where he becomes emotional because he wants eye contact, but then this game is kind of training him to not.
Yeah.
But then the other twin, on the other hand, the one that she's kind of said is more like her, that twin is able to look her in the face and just look away without
it feels
interacting with the game or whatever.
Yeah.
Like he just looks at her and just looks away whenever.
Yeah.
Huh. But the other twin, and they catch up with them like a few years later, and the one that gets caught up in the game has problems making friends.
Like antisocial.
Yeah.
Huh. Because, you know, like sociopathy isn't really a technical term in psychology. It's psychopathy isn't really either. People argue whether sociopathy and psychopathy are the same. Some people say that psychopathy is just a lack of like empathy, lack of remorse, like a hollow emotional.
That's psychopathy.
That's psychopathy, and then sociopathy is the added aspect of sadism, like sadistic tendency. But then a lot of people say no, that's not it. They're the exact same. So there's kind of like an argument amongst it.
Okay,
But anyways, even so, those two terms aren't even aren't even real terms. The real term is antisocial personality disorder.
Oh.
Like that's the real like technical term for psychopathy, sociopathy type behavior.
Yeah.
But.
And I'm sure that's what that kid was, the twin.
Yeah, that's interesting. Well, I was gonna say something. The whole thing about the societal construct of masculinity, it does, and emotions, it does make sense evolutionarily though, because the person who's gonna kill themselves, the guy that's gonna kill themselves because things aren't going their way, is not gonna pass on his genes.
Yeah.
Do you know? So it makes sense that the only genes that are going to be passed on are the more like over the course of hundreds of thousands of years are going to be, they're going to cycle out that though most of the emotional affect. Now mothers, I shouldn't say mothers, women are mothers, and so they can be emotional because that doesn't really matter for them. Like they don't need to, like they're more about taking care of the kid, which requires emotion, and so that doesn't get cycled out because they're not out there fighting, like hunting and fighting, and they're taking care of the child, which requires emotion, so that doesn't get cycled out. But in men it does, because you can't be emotionally you can't be so emotionally caught up.
Yeah, that's interesting. So, and you're saying it becomes that becomes inherent in men,
right? And remember, it's all relative. So it's not that men are supposed to have no emotions. It's only that in general, men are supposed to have less than women. It's relative between them. So it's never like, oh, men are supposed to have this amount of emotions, or women are supposed to have this amount of emotions. It's just that women are supposed to have more than men. But that's clear. That's of course that's the case. That's like the running joke in as far as gender. Is that women are more emotional.
Yeah, it's a joke that people aren't getting.
But some would argue that women actually aren't, that emotional is actually a poor choice of words, and that women actually aren't more emotional. They're just more emotional in regards to relationships, and men are more emotional in regards to ego.
Yeah.
So women are more emotional when it comes to other people. Men are more emotional when it comes to their self. Because we don't really label it this way, but if you punch a guy in the face because he like says something bad about you, or he made you feel stupid or whatever, it's pretty emotional. Yeah. Like that's really emotional. Like we wouldn't consider it that. Like even if you like you're like a fighter and you like steel yourself up and you're like, oh, this guy took shit, all right, let's go, like, and people would be like, oh wow, that guy like has control of his emotions. You really don't, right? Like that's super emotional.
Yeah. Like
if you feel if your ego is bruised, and like just the fact that your ego can get that bruised,
Yeah, that is true. That is, I mean, I've never really seen it any other way. I mean, because you remember when you were there, and I remember I got pissed at you for saying... Yeah, but it was the guy who had reached over the counter.
Yeah.
So I was over there bartending one night, and I was by myself, and some guy got angry for his drinks taking long as hell to get to him.
Is that what it was?
Yeah. Well, actually, I forgot what the fuck it was now, but...
It was something like that.
Yeah, it had to be something like that. And it got to the point where he wanted to fucking punch me over the counter. And the whole time I was looking because, like, I have to deal with that kind of shit all the time. Not the point where it gets to almost physical, but just people getting pissed about, damn, this shit taking long as hell.
Yeah.
So him escalating into that point, like, it's been made sense to me. Like, when he did that, I was like, yo, this guy's fucking emotional and shit. And I think I said it right there, too. Like, he was around all his friends, so I think he felt some kind of way, like he was comfortable and able to do something like that. Like, I'm going to reach over and slap that hat off your head or some shit.
Yeah.
I was like, yo, get your guy, man. He's all emotional and shit right now.
Yeah, he really was super emotional.
Yeah.
What was that? And then, he was drunk too.
Yeah, that's what it was.
That's definitely a factor. That brings it out. But that shows you that it's even more nuanced than just women are more emotional.
Yeah.
Because especially when you talk about alcohol.
Yeah.
Because you get guys drunk, certain guys, and they'll start saying some weird stuff.
Dude.
Like, that sounds weird coming from a dude.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like you're my best friend, man. You know what I mean? Like that type of so it's not even. And if all it takes is alcohol to bring that out, then clearly that was always there.
Yeah, it was on the.
So you know what I mean? So.
Surface. Well, it's because as I'm thinking about the situation now, this guy was just putting it in the context of how men are supposed to act. He can only act one way, and that's through anger. Imagine if he was able to fully express himself. He probably would have been questioning me. Like,
yeah.
Why didn't you serve me, man? Like,
or what about and I'm not going to name names, but what about the two people we used to work with who got in an argument in the car?
Oh yeah.
That's just pure masculine like manifestation.
Yeah, no, it truly is. What that and that's just like in workplace in general. I noticed that with a lot of is it with women friends too? No, it's just guy friends.
But that's emotional, you know?
Mm-hmm.
That's getting super emotional about your ego, you know? It's all about the ego.
Yeah, it is. No, it truly is. And it's a weird thing because especially with these guys, that there's at least one of them. If I'm thinking about who you're thinking about, at least one of them, like, we do get into this whole thing where we know we're upholding these stupid societal rules. Like, being a man, you have to be like this with each other. So.
Yeah.
And I participated in that willingly. I threw you in the fucking trash can just off of some masculinity shit.
Well, I don't give a shit about that shit.
Yeah, but that's just like the whole thing because that's like playing off that whole thing. But at the same time, that was maybe more what do you call that? More like a poking fun of it. I feel like maybe not so much for the person getting thrown in the trash can, but like a lot of the times on my part, I feel like it's not who I am to be throwing people in a trash can or acting like the fucking bully. Even though a lot of the times I will play that part. Like, it's a part I'm playing as just, damn it, I'm losing the word that goes with it.
What does it mean?
It's like a joke. Satirical.
Oh, satirical. Yeah.
Because, like, at least I feel like I wouldn't be like that in...
a serious situation?
Yeah, in a serious situation. I do that completely satirically, like.
Well, that's how I think. I mean, that's how I always took it. I
Yeah,
feel like
yeah,
that's how
exactly.
I feel like that's how most people
Yeah.
took it too.
Yeah. Oh, dude. Yeah, like, and then a lot, and some of the times I remember it was this one time where it did like get too far. I was like, shit, and I think I caught it. I was like, shit, yeah, I think it caught too far, and I think shit, whatever it was, you had to talk it out. I was like, yeah, that did get kind of fucked up. I'll go ahead and help you. I'll probably bring it up later, but because if I say what it is, it's gonna be too specific.
Yeah. No, but it's kind of to really dig deep to see what it is that's the difference between. The more I think about it, to really dig deep and figure out what is the difference between the masculine, feminine, it is becoming more and more difficult because like ego is a huge aspect of it, but then I see girls that have their own like spin on that and on their ego, and like that's why like girls get into their like gossiping about each other and make, you know what I mean, and talking shit, and then guys, like it's not like, because like when I was talking about how guys get drunk and they do the whole, oh, you're my best friend thing. Well, even when they're not drunk, there's the whole thing about like loyalty.
Yeah.
And like that's emotional.
Yeah.
Like that's an emotional thing.
Yeah.
You know?
All this masculinity shit is all emotional, but they can only express in a certain amount of ways, so it manifests into whole actions like loyalty. But
I wonder though if it's only being able to only express it. Well, I mean, I'm sure, like you said, it's the feedback loop, but there must be some evolutionary driver, and I'm just trying to think on what it would be. Like, it makes sense that that emotional that the manifestation of emotion through loyalty would make more sense for guys. Like, okay, like it's almost like when I said before, like it's that guys are less emotional than girls. That's actually not the case. It's just that guys, the emotion of the masculine manifests in a certain way, and the emotion of the feminine manifests in another way.
Yeah.
Each way was advantageous, evolutionarily speaking.
Yeah.
Like throughout history. So like loyalty that's important
for a group.
Yeah.
Because working in groups, especially for like a species like a social animal like humans,
and a warring animal, like going out and hunting, where like you have to be able to trust each other, and like going out and fighting war against another tribe, where like you have to trust the people in your tribe, and then as far as the ego, you whatever your station is, you have to uphold your reputation, because that's like how you get people to like follow you, or that's how you get people to respect you, and like how you do better in life. Like that's how you get a good mate. You know what I mean? You have to have that reputation.
Yeah.
So like if someone bruises your ego, they're tarnishing your reputation. And so you have to respond to that.
Yeah.
Or you won't get a good mate.
Yeah.
And all the people who didn't, and they're like, I don't care. Like, talk your shit.
Yeah.
Those people didn't.
Yeah, they didn't procreate.
No.
And then they didn't get any spawns.
No. But which is interesting, because like I'm one of those people. So it's not to say that stuff funnels. It's not to say that stuff has totally been selected out. It's just in general.
Yeah.
Most of it has. Like I would, if for whatever reason, girls were like oh, you don't care what people like, you don't care about your ego, damn, that's sexy. Then that's how everyone would be.
Yeah.
Everyone. Like the weird people.
Yeah.
I don't want to say weird, but
if it was inherent in women to be like that, if that was like a general inheritance,
then it would have changed men. And you know what I mean? Like it would have changed. It would have changed
it
how
definitely
men
would have
evolved.
Like lended a hand in some kind of change. I don't know if it would have been like a big enough change without the help of some other factors. But I'm definitely sure like if the factors that played into what women like within men changed at that level.
Right. Well, there's this idea, Richard Dawkins wrote a book on it called The Selfish Gene. And I think that this is the book that he wrote about this. I'm almost positive. But anyways, he came up with this concept called the extended phenotype. Phenotype is so a phenotype is basically a genetic variant that that self-selects by assisting you in passing itself on. So all genes do this separately, right? So it's not that like there's something within us that like it's not like your genes you're like, oh, I want to pass on. It's just that the ones that helped you do it over time, all separately, those were the ones that kept getting passed on.
Yeah.
And the idea of the extended phenotype is something that a genetic variant helps you create that in turn helps you pass it on. So for example, there's a certain type of bird that like builds like nests, and whatever bird builds the best nest, that's the bird that gets the mate, right? The nest is the extended phenotype, right? So in simple animals like birds, it's very simple, but in humans you can make some very interesting. You can think about some very interesting extended phenotypes, such as artwork or something. You know what I mean? Like if you are a good artist, then your artwork is attracting mates, and so in turn, like just like how I said, like if girls were choosing mates on that basis, then it would have affected the evolution of man.
Yeah.
In the same way, like if girls only wanted people that were like artistic, then eventually it would change evolution to choose for that. But it goes the same way for men.
Yeah.
Like whatever men, and they're doing it to each other. You know, like they're affecting their own evolution throughout history based on what they're looking for. So it gets really interesting.
So the extended phenotype is basically something outside of
something that's not a part of you
but is getting carried over the generation that you see consistently.
That's assisting in you passing on your genes.
Okay, interesting.
Yeah. And I remember I was listening to
because the nest thing is, and then you compared it with the art thing, and it's giving me this weird picture where you always see a bird with a nest, and I'm thinking about every guy with canvas.
Yeah, well, it's anything, you know?
Yeah.
Like for you, it'd be music or whatever.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like that's your, like if that attracts a mate, then that's your extended phenotype.
Yeah.
You know? And there's like humans have developed all sorts of those things, you know?
Yeah.
Like for some it's like crazy things, like empires,
Yeah.
like that's gonna get you laid.
Well, yo, speaking of empires, this is getting kind of off topic, but it's a little fun fact info. Apparently, like, it's like a small percentage now, but I think every Chinese person.
Genghis Khan.
Yeah.
Yeah, almost like a huge. It used to be like a big percentage of people have like little Genghis Khan DNA.
Yeah, that's so crazy.
Because of that, though.
Yeah, he got fucking laid.
Yeah, he did.
He got fucked.
But I was listening to, I think it was Brett Weinstein, and he was talking about how human females are the only females in the animal kingdom whose breasts stay like noticeable even when they're not raising breastfeeding infant. So
really?
Or pregnant with one. So every other animal that has breasts, they only get like engorged. They only are noticeable.
Yeah, like when it needs to be used.
When it needs to be used. Totally flat chested otherwise. Like literally, like they have nipples, but that's it. Like they're just there, So humans are the only ones where it's because because of that cross evolutionary influence.
Yeah. That's interesting.
Like guys just started only choosing girls.
Would that be considered an extended phenotype now?
No, because that's a part of them.
Yeah. Oh, okay.
But extended phenotypes are things that are outside of your body.
Okay.
Yeah. So.
Yeah, that's interesting though. Well, it's also got me wondering about the dude's nipples. Like what? I feel like that's a pretty popular question, but like, what the fuck are the use of the dude's nipples?
Like, as far evolutionarily?
Yeah.
I really don't know. Like, I'm sure there's an explanation, but that's the most interesting thing about evolutionary studies, is that every single thing you can think of
has some kind of use. Yeah.
So,
like, you remember the hiccups I told you about? How that the supposed use of that was related back to our aquatic ancestors.
Oh yeah. Yep.
Or they're trying to intake water.
And that's why evolutionary psychology is one of my favorite subjects, because that's about the mind. Yeah. Like why cognitively why we process information the way that we do. Yeah. And it could, and another little shout out to Brett Weinstein. He was talking about autoerotic asphyxiation, and
the use of that.
Yeah, like why do people
choke themselves while they jack off?
And you know what his explanation was? And first of all, this is
his own hypothesis.
This is his own hypothesis, okay. but hey, it's interesting. So and he wasn't really, at least I don't know this for sure, but the way he said it, it seemed like he wasn't really saying like he really, really, really thinks this, but like this is like just to show how everything, it comes from somewhere, evolutionarily.
Yeah.
And so he said that it could have been the body's last ditch effort to procreate before you die. So the reason why it feels good is because throughout history, when you were banging a chick and a tiger comes out of nowhere and fucking knocks your head off, that your body's gonna quickly ejaculate as a last ditch effort to impregnate the woman.
Wait, what is it called again?
Autoerotic asphyxiation.
Autoerotic
asphyxiation. Asphyxiate. Like,
I'm trying. And the definition of asphyxiation, because I've had this term.
To be without breath.
Okay. So, what the fuck then?
So really,
because I thought these were dudes who were like choking themselves.
So it's not. So it really has nothing to do with the actual act of choking. It has to do with the act of being close to death.
Yeah. Huh.
And then he said now you have to understand, for that to be true, and for us to still have remnants of that, means that it must have worked multiple times, like a lot. So, and at first you think like, well, then that can't be the case because that's crazy. But when you think about how much time there was and how dangerous it was to live back then, and how many dudes must have died in the act of trying to procreate,
it makes me think of the anglerfish.
Why? With the light bulb?
Yeah, I think the males are like tiny, puny ones, and after sex, they just get eaten by the big female anglerfish.
Praying mantis does that too. Rips the head off of the male.
I think some spiders do that too. That's interesting.
Yeah, but
so then what the fuck?
Yeah, so that really shows you how, like, every behavior, there's a link. You know, there's a link to every behavior.
Yeah. It's interesting. You're calling it evolutionary, but I've been calling it Darwinian this whole time.
It's the same thing.
Yeah, it's the same thing, yeah.
Natural selection, you know.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Darwinian's just as good. The only reason I say evolutionary is because...
yeah, it fits. The word evolution is right inside.
Yeah. And Darwin was just the you know, he's the grandfather.
Yeah.
So he didn't really have everything as right as we do now.
Yeah.
But it is still Darwinian. There's nothing wrong with giving him credit. He was a smart guy.
And like the way that we're utilizing that whole idea now, I wonder if he even like he definitely didn't think it was gonna get used in the ways that it does now.
No way. No.
Like just how deep rooted that idea extended.
Yeah.
Like to every part of human being. Yeah.
No, that's true.
And relating to the whole evolutionary Darwinian whatever, with the emotional thing, I wanted to speak on this because I did give like some thoughts about this. I don't know if we talked about this before, but like I had given some thought on like what is the use of like being angry or being sad, and they go about this in the book, which is really interesting, but I have my own thoughts, so when I read shit like that and then it kind of contradicts the shit that I was thinking about when I was thinking about like what. Now granted, I have no fucking background on psychology in general, so
well, what?
I have no merit to be holding, but like just entertaining the thought of like what would be the use of being angry at. Because this was a thought I had. It was somebody... I was crossing the street and this motherfucker just, like, cut me off. And I got angry immediately. But, like, where does that come from?
Being angry?
Like, I had to really think about that because as I was crossing the street, there's nothing I can do. If he fucking hit me, like, what the fuck? I'm going to get angry. Usually if you get angry, that's to, like, fight.
Yeah, well, and that's the same thing, though.
Yeah, and they explain that in a book, like, apparently blood rushes to the upper extremities.
Yeah.
To get you prepared to fight.
Yeah.
That's why your face turns red.
Yeah.
Because blood is rushing up and prepares you to fight. But I was thinking about that instance where, like, somebody cuts you off. And I guess... in there, I was probably focused on the person, so focusing on somebody that I can fuck up probably gives that emotion some...
Well, you have to realize that our intelligence has outpaced our evolution.
Well... Yeah, but
so
because if I present a different scenario, like say I'm about to get run over by a train, there's no anger there. That's straight fear. But why isn't fear there when I'm about to get hit by a car?
Yeah, definitely because it's a person.
Yeah, and it's probably because I can see the person.
Yeah,
so I'm like,
well, even if you
and probably because I associate a car with a person.
Yeah.
More than a train, where trains just seem to be like.
But no, that's definitely it.
Yeah.
Because it's a slight against you, a personal slight.
Yeah.
But that's why free will is such an important concept, because if you really download the concept, the untenability of the free will concept, if you really integrate it into your software, then a person on the street standing there yelling in your face is the same as the train.
You're gonna have to connect that thought.
So if you truly understand the lack of free will is just totally untenable as a concept. It just doesn't make any sense in reality. It's just something we feel is there. There's no evidence that can make it real. It just doesn't make any sense. Then a person in the street spinning in your face is the same as the train coming towards you on the tracks. There's no difference
in the reception
in how you should be in
perceiving that.
Yeah, it's just another train, you know. Like, it's just.
Well, it sounds like you mean comparing a person spitting in my face with that of the person cutting me off with a car. Then
no. It's the person spitting in your face.
If I'm jumpy, because the train gives me fear. I'm going to be scared of somebody spitting in my face.
No. I'm not talking about fear. Oh. I'm talking about the lack of anger. Do you know what I'm saying? I'm sorry. So I'm talking about the lack of anger, not the fear instead. So instead of a train, anything, you know, like I'm trying to think of a good example. But you know what? There is no, because we personify things. Like, it's raining outside and you were supposed to do something that day, you know? But like, there are people that do get angry about that. But that's because they like personify it, you know? Mm-hmm. Like, what the fuck? God damn it! Like whatever. So like, so I guess that's not really a good example. But you know what I mean? Like, the fact is, there's no reason to get mad at the weather. No one there to get mad at. Just like there's no one to get mad at. Like, you know what I mean?
Okay, I'm getting it. Yeah. There's no reason to get.
There's no.
I guess there's no reason to get mad at somebody that's spitting at you if you're.
There's no one
if you're
there.
Really internalize the whole free will thing.
Yes. There's no one there.
Yeah.
Just like there's no one that is sitting in the seat you're sitting in right now. It just really feels like it.
Yeah.
You know, that's the strangest thing. Like it's not that you're supposed to look at people like they're. That's the thing that what people don't get about free will. Like, they just can't understand because they want to say, like, well, how does that work? Does that mean because how does that work? Because I feel like how I feel right now. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And what they don't understand is, well, you don't have free will right now. So however it works, it is how it's working right now.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, it just that's how it works. Like, you really feel like you do. You know, that's just how we've evolved.
Yeah.
Like, if we evolved to be very sensitive to our lack of free will, we would never get anything done.
No, that's why we evolved the way that we did. Yeah. Because those moments of awareness have been pushed away to a different part of the mind now. That's why we have something like what is that? Not the amygdala, but
the logical part?
No, the part that just kind of like keeps your habits. Where when you start the chain of habits,
is it that?
Well, whatever part of it is, where you're just able to do things on automatic without thinking about it. That part, like that's the evolution that's happening. That's why you don't need to be aware of everything, because your brain has evolved to be able to compress that set of actions so that it can save energy and use that extra energy for something else.
Yeah.
So you're running on automatic and
the default mode network.
I don't know, that's not the one. It's
because that's kind of it too. Like the default mode network is what's happening when you're now.
The default mode network, I thought, was the connection between all the different parts of the brain.
Well, it's the default mode network is it's the what's the word? It's like how what your brain settles it, the configuration that your brain settles into when you're just doing things on automatic.
Yeah. I don't know if that's what it is though. That one sounds a little bit more macroscopic.
It is. It's the default mode network is like your whole brain, but it's like the configuration of your whole brain when you're doing things on autopilot.
Yeah, because I remember you were bringing it up and they were looking it up in the DMT studies and that whole thing.
Yeah. Like when the default mode network
basal ganglia. That's
nice.
Yeah, that's the part of the brain that if you do something enough, it just all gets thrown into that part and you're just able to do it. That's the reason why habits work, because you're able to, if you do something enough, it's just going to get thrown into that part of your mind and then becomes a habit and you don't have to think about it anymore and it becomes easy. That shit was really, really insightful when I read that in the Habits of Mind. That was a dope book. Yeah, check that out. But you can see it too. Like I was just saying earlier how, and it's in the beginning of this podcast too, how like I'm learning all this music shit. I'm learning how to play piano, how to sight read, and that's just because it's like fucking repetition.
Yeah.
And I don't like think about it, but afterwards, like after days of it, I'm just able to play scales up and down the keyboard, and that's because I know that the repetition has become a habit and it's become easy because my brain is just like put it into the pituitary gland. I don't know if it's the pituitary gland now. I think that part's way too important. Whatever fucking gland it was.
The pituitary is like the gland that they say they found DMT in. It's like a hormonal gland.
It's probably not that one then. Whatever part of the brain it was, that's the one that's working when I'm over here killing it on the fucking piano and learning all this new shit.
Yeah.
Yeah, dude. That shit is super interesting to me because it always plays in the back of my mind as like I'm struggling through school. Yeah. And I wouldn't say I'm like struggling, but when I'm coming across new concepts, like because I know that I'm going to get it later on, that it's kind of like motivation for me to keep going with it.
Yeah.
Like I'm in some low math right now, and it's some stuff that I've probably forgotten over time. And as I'm coming up on it, and I'm like seeing myself struggle with it, I'm like, oh shit. And it's just kind of like motivation to like do a whole bunch of these problems and also observe my brain working. Because then I'm able to do it all mentally now. And I'm like, oh shit, that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
And I just kind of show off in class and just give into the whole societal structure thing of masculinity and show my dominance.
Yeah, there's this term, metacognition. But I feel like there's another one too. It's like meta knowledge or meta memory or something like that. But it's basically like knowing that you know stuff. So, and there's like a special like branch of or like subset of psychology that's like about that, like the importance of it, like when you know that you know how to do something. So like if you like when you get to the point in that math when you're like, I know this now. Yeah. Like that you know that you know that math and you're certain of it, you know.
And you know what's interesting too is observing it in other people, because there's some other people in my same math class who they were just like, they've always been talking and shit, and like they didn't know too much, which was the reason why they were talking. They kept asking questions, and they would take forever to answer a problem, and always, if ever they tried to spit out the answer, it'd be the wrong answer. But then lately, they've been spitting out the right answer. And I've been in the front end of the class, so I haven't really taken a good look. But I think it was today I kind of looked back to see who was spitting out all these right answers, and this guy just has his arms crossed because he's doing it all mentally. And this is the same guy I've been hearing like spitting out wrong answers in the beginning of the semester, but he's kind of getting it now, and it's interesting seeing that growth in somebody else. Cause
it's funny how some people like, and this is kind of like off topic, but it's kind of not. So I've been listening to some of like Sam Harris's like more recent episodes, which were like live shows. And like the first half he does like a normal like episode with someone, but like in an auditorium, you know, and then the last half he takes questions from the auditorium. And like in the beginning, before the questions, like right before he starts doing the questions, he always says like okay, like just like there's a lot of people here, we want to get through as many as possible, so just, you know, ask the question, try and keep it short as possible, like don't like unfortunately I can't like have a discussion with you, and like no stories, like every fucking time, dude, there's somebody, and it's like multiple people, and it blows my mind listening to it, because you know that they have fucking heard the other ones too, and yet they do it. And I just want to be like, I just want to get in their heads, like, how do you think that this is okay? Like, how do you not see how dumb you look for doing exactly what he told you not to do? Yeah. Like, it blows every time it blows my mind. Like, literally, like, telling long stories and then asking the question, or worse, after he answers the question, like, interjecting and like arguing with them on stage, like in the live show. Like it blows my mind.
Does he ever just cut in and be like, yeah, hurry up?
Yeah, he does. Like sometimes he'll be like, sorry, we gotta move on. Like, but some people, and like now, because like as the tour has gone on, it's happened like various times. It's getting more. He's getting even more specific when he introduces the question segment. So he's like literally, he'll be like, "You like, you know, keep it short, blah blah blah. Like, ask this is just a question, and it don't do this because you're gonna feel the rest of the crowd hating you."
He says that?
Yeah, like he says it in a like a more articulate way. Like I think what he said was, you're gonna feel the weight of the ire of all these people if you do that. Basically, I think those were like those, he used those words, and that show, people did it. It's just like crazy. Like what are you thinking? It's like they don't even know how unbelievably dumb they look doing that.
It's such an interesting thing, because now that I'm really thinking about what goes into the mind of a person who does go ahead and do that, you have to have, well, first off, you have to be super consumed in that moment.
Yeah. Yeah.
That person must be so consumed.
And even if it's not arguing with
because,
them,
like, what he's saying about the weight of the ire
yeah
has to detract people from doing it.
Yeah.
But the moment somebody gets the mic to ask a question,
they're in it.
Yeah, it just must disappear. And the habit of being caught up in whatever emotion just must take over.
And some of them are painful to listen to.
Yeah.
Like the interjecting ones are just like, dude, shut up, sit down. But other people, they'll go on these long rambling, and sometimes Harris will just be like, okay, yeah, I think I get the idea. Like literally, like he'll like say that. Like he'll be like, okay, I understand what you're asking.
Yeah.
And, like interrupt them, but like the rambling, like them, and this is what the only thing I can. This is my theory. They respect him so much that they like want to have a conversation. Like they have an idea and they want to tell him their idea, and you know what I mean. And they want him to think it's a good idea, and so they go on these long rambles explaining like some hypothesis of theirs, but like it's always horrible, you know, because a person that has a good idea is smart enough to know not to do that.
Yeah.
So it's never those people, you know.
It must be. It has to be a lack of social interaction.
Yeah. 100%. Because you would know better. Like you would just know better.
Plus, well, for one, you'd know better, but also you'd have the added benefit of being able to share that idea with somebody else to actually know if that's even worth sharing, period.
Yeah.
Let alone in front of a crowd and for somebody that you possibly look up to.
Yeah, and it would be different because there's few times where, maybe only one, where someone's like going on a ramble because they're saying something bad about it, like you said this and blah blah blah, and those people, of course, they don't give a shit. Like they're there just to talk shit.
Yeah.
But most people, like, that's only like one time. Most people, they really are like, they want him to answer their question.
These are probably people who like just listen to Sam Harris by themselves.
Yeah.
And they're like, oh shit, he's coming to my city.
Yeah, for sure. Like they think they're intellectuals, and then they're just not.
I have one guy at school who listened to Sam Harris, and
really,
he brought him up in English class, and I was like, oh shit, this guy must know some shit.
Yeah,
but
he doesn't. Oh,
bro,
that's rough. Because I actually don't know anyone that listens to him like I do, and if someone said they did, instantly I'd be like, oh, I would think the same thing. I'd be like, oh, this guy must know something.
Yeah.
If you listen to him.
Yeah, because Sam Harris, like, he has popularity, but he, like, especially, I feel like in what level of society you and I are in, the people that we're surrounded by, I think we'd be hard pressed to come across another person who listens to that kind of thing.
Yeah. No, totally. Because a lot of people listen to him, but in the like percentage of the country, it's not that many.
Yeah.
Not like someone like Joe Rogan. Doesn't take that long to find someone who like listens to him at least occasionally,
or even just know his name.
Yeah.
You say his name and somebody will be like, oh, the guy from UFC.
Yeah. But Sam Harris, and that's the thing. Most people don't even know who he is.
Yeah.
Even if someone knows who he is, that like lifts my spirits for a second. You know, like, okay, they must know something of something. Like, they must know something about something. If they at least know who he is. Yeah. And if he listens to him, then that's even more. But this guy didn't, huh?
It's so interesting, man, because I feel like I'm giving away too much and I might get in trouble for some shit, but fuck it. So this guy is like, and he references him too, like, he's like, Sam Harris says this and whatever. And
is
like
he's for him or against him?
He's for him.
Yeah.
And like he makes some cool points, but it like combine that with things that he does. I just like observe the actions that he does and like what classes we take together. And it's very obvious that some of the things that Sam Harris says and whatever ideas that connect with that aren't translating into this person's train of thought.
Is he liberal or conservative?
I would think he's liberal, but he also he just straddles this line of like liberal. I really can't say. I don't talk to him that much. I don't really talk to anybody too often.
So give me an example of like when he
so it was actually for one of our English essays, and I ended up wanting to talk to him because he did get into a lot of arguments, and we tended to differ on our views. So I wanted to go to him for an opposing view and try to bring that out of him because I feel like those kinds of conversations help the argument. So I go to him bringing up that, and he does get deep into the thought process behind certain... I forget what the certain essay was about, but he did get kind of deep into the thought process behind it. But to a certain point, it reaches this wall, and we never got to explore it. But also on my part, I didn't push it because I was just like, oh, okay, like I can. I guess it's part of the postmodern. It's the postmodern view. I guess that's where I'd put him.
Like that, there's no truth, basically, or like,
yeah.
And he's all about that.
I don't know if he's all about that, but he's wherever he's heading to, he's probably in the postmodern mindset of like things aren't this way and they should be a different way because it's not working the way that it is. And
I'll have to hear him.
Yeah, that I was thinking about you the whole time. I had talked to him. I was like, I wonder what Jimmy would think about this guy. But it like, to me, I think he's also kind of younger too. I don't know if he's even 21 yet, but he's like in the beginning stages of like
learning about that stuff.
Yeah, so that like that's why his views just come across as like he's digging, but it's undeveloped. Yeah.
I mean, honestly, like, just so we don't sound like we're like fucking trash him too much. The fact that he's listening to it is huge. It's like pretty impressive. Like the fact that he's interested in it. You know what I mean? Because most people
and that's why
couldn't get through an episode.
And that's why I say, and that's a good word. Like he's developing it. That's why I feel like that fits. Like he's developing it. He's not all the way there.
Like I was listening. I was reading. Reading a subreddit today on Joe Rogan, and people were like,
"Which one?
I forget."
Is it Joe Rogan subreddit?
Maybe. Honestly, I don't know. I just because I was looking up, like, because you know how, I don't know if you knew, but like in the early Joe Rogan Experience days, he you know how he has Jamie as like the guy who looks up all the web pages and stuff. That's his producer, and his producer before that used to be a guy named Brian Redban, and like I haven't heard, because I've started at most recent and worked my way backwards, and he's at like 1,000 and something, and I've worked my way back to I'm not sure. I've listened to almost like 500 episodes so far, and so like I'm working my way back. But like I've only heard a few where he used to, because I scanned through too, like picked and chose, and so I've only heard a few where because Brian Redban still comes on sometimes, but I've heard a few where he actually was the producer, like back then when he was the producer, and I heard and I could tell that like there's some animosity like in Rogan's voice towards Brian Redban, like. They would have like an intellectual on, and Redman kept making stupid jokes, and he was just like, dude, shut the fuck up. Like, whatever. And so I looked it up. I looked into it. Like, did he get fired? Because that's kind of sounded like where it was headed from that episode. And it ended up that like that was the reason for. I mean, I'm sure there's more to it. I don't know what really happened, but that's not even the point. But there was people on that Reddit, on that subreddit, that were saying like, yeah, like, I can't even really get through an episode anymore. Like, he just keeps like, it's totally like his show's totally gone off the rails. He's having all these academics on and like intellectual and like I can only listen to it on double speed and this and that and I was just thinking like, man, that's rough. Like what, how as a society, like we can't read a book, we can't listen to an intellectual podcast episode on normal speed, let alone get through a book. Like the intellectual depth of our generation is just it's just being filled with sand, you know? Like there's just nothing left. It's crazy. Like everyone thinks they're into that stuff until they actually like listen to it, and then they're like, oh, I don't want to listen to this at all. Like, this is totally boring to me. You know what I mean? Like, they think they like science, and they think but they can't get through a single research paper. You know what I mean? Like, it's crazy.
Yeah. It's interesting. I feel like I have...
It's sad is what it is.
I feel like I have a reverse growth from that, where I'm getting more into like reading like whole articles, whereas before I would just kind of get the extract or whatever.
I mean, even just really learning. Yeah. And it's not even just about like reading or listening to it on normal speed and listening to the whole thing or like reading the whole article. It's not even about just that. It's just like really wanting to get the full, really wanting to absorb like like fully rounded information. Yeah. You know, and not just little bits and pieces that are in the shallow end. You know, like
what? Yeah, and I would go maybe add on to that in saying like listening to the whole thing or reading a whole article or whatever, like that just leads to, because everybody has their own opinions, and if every single person was to go about reading every single article and getting just the whole body of everything, like there'd be like, first off, that'd be like high education by itself, because people would just have like not only their own views, but it'd be separate from like headline reading that the majority of people do.
Exactly.
So the summarizations of a headline, and now the masses just like read that headline and then they go off and have all these opinions. Imagine the opinion of like these masses when they are able to go ahead and read whole bodies like that.
But there are people that that only read headline articles. Yeah. It's like someone who says, I'm into astronomy, because they read articles that say there's going to be a full moon tonight. Like, that doesn't tell you any... Do you know what I mean, though? Yeah. Like, an article... Like, they're into science. They're into science because they read articles that say, scientists have discovered this. But do you know what I mean? Like, whole articles that are just surface level... This is what's going... They don't understand anything about the science they're doing. They don't understand anything about... What's
Oh, you're talking about articles that are shitty?
Like, not just articles, but I'm just talking about the level of interest that people have in intellectual subjects. Like, they even would say that they like, no, I'm really into it, like, whatever. But they really don't want to learn because they don't want to take the time to.
Yeah.
Because they're not really interested in it. You know, like, they're interested in hearing about it. And that's what those articles are. That's what those headlines are. Like, they're interested in hearing about it. Like, they're not interested in actually learning about it. Like, they're interested in knowing about it, not learning about it. There's a difference, you know?
Yeah.
There's a difference. And like you say, like, when people get to that point or whatever, but how do you see that happening? Because we're moving in the other direction, where people are really learning less and less.
Yeah.
Like, true deep knowledge.
Yeah.
Well-rounded knowledge.
Yeah, that this is making me remember this idea that I had. I don't know if you remember. I was bringing up an idea where it's kind of like a website that's like Reddit, but instead of a separate section for comments, the comments are in the article itself, and it would be bubbles where people have commented, and you can join that conversation in a certain part of the article.
And remember we had the same. I said the thing about, like, the Kindle, where like it would be like
commenting within the book. Yeah,
that'd be cool.
Dope.
Yeah.
But that'd be like a way to go about.
It actually makes me think of this thing that Sam Harris actually said about reason, and basically he said he talked about this in the context of free will, and he basically said, like, reason because some people say that you can't have reason without free will, and Sam Harris's argument was, no, reason is even more proof that you don't, because if you understand each axiom of logic, then you are helplessly dragged toward the conclusion. So, like, if someone presents you with evidence and you're a logical person and the evidence is logical, you can't unlogic your reasoning. Like, you can't help but understand each thing logically and be helplessly dragged towards that logical conclusion.
Yeah.
Like, if you're a logical person, you can't just say, well, I'm just not gonna like believe that. Like, if you're a logical person and you're being logical, then there's only one way to go, you know? And that's not in particular what I want to talk about, but I want to talk about in the future, like when we're able to start, like, upgrading our brains. I wonder if we could get to a point where we make our brains, like, logic proof. So, like, we can't help but be logical. You know what I mean? Like our brains, we upgrade our brains and advance them so much that they're just perfectly logical all the time. So there's nothing that you could like just be, like, too stupid to understand, or something that you just, like, are too emotional to see.
Yeah.
Because, like, the upgrades in your brain would just be like, boom, like, this is how it is. Like, so you can't help but understand it. Like, what if you know what I mean, though? Like, you couldn't help but understand it.
Yeah.
And then also, where we could take the effort out of learning. So you just download information like the Matrix, you know, like, oh, this article, like, yeah, we've totally lost our attention spans and we can't even get through, like, the first couple sentences, but that doesn't matter because now I just press this button and I just downloaded the article, you know what I mean? I just downloaded all of Wikipedia, like, and with a perfect memory so that I can just draw from it at any point, you know, like, that's would be a pretty crazy future.
That would be.
Like, you can't even comprehend how that would be consciously, because, like, now the way that it works is someone says something, and you're having a conversation, and you don't really, like, you're not looking at your memories and saying, oh yeah, this will fit there and this will fit there. Shit just comes up, and like you just connect it, and it's doing it all. Remember how we talked about how comprehension is a black box in the brain, where you remember when we talked about that, where we're not conscious of it, like we're not conscious of comprehension. We just understand. That it memory is the same way. Like we're not like scanning through all of our memories, choosing which ones to bring up, and then even when the memories do come up, we're not connecting them consciously. Like it's just, that's all happening behind the curtain.
Yeah.
Do you know?
Yeah, I remember you saying that.
Yeah. So it would be to have full access to all information. Like just say, just for example, just Wikipedia. To have full access to everything on Wikipedia, like how would that be consciously? Like would it be the same way? It's just that.
Yeah, I'm thinking about like what would be the possible ways to experience that, like, because humans are emotional species. What if it does become like an emotional kind of thing? Like you're downloading all this information, and there's like emotions attached to the information.
Well, possibly. It would be. Imagine that though, because it would be, but because you are so, like, because your brain is so advanced and like so upgraded, you couldn't help but understand things in the most logical way, but you still have like the emotions to go along with it. So like say you were religious and you get the upgrade, and all of a sudden like you instantly realize like, oh my god, none of this makes sense. You'd still feel that emotionally.
Yeah. I imagine that could be played with too, like just like whatever background you have and contrasting that with the life you would have after an upgrade like that.
Yeah. Well, you don't even need to do it. Like, we don't even need to go that crazy. Like, we could just talk about using CRISPR. Say we use CRISPR to just increase everyone's IQ. So that we're all, like, genius-level readers. And, like we all have, like, a genius-level intellect. Then you don't even need, like, crazy upgrades and none of that. Like, you're just everyone's just naturally smart. You know? Even that, because there's a... But that goes back to what we were talking about before about interest and curiosity. Like, even if you could give that to everyone, like, culturally we're losing interest in intellectual pursuits. I think that's what I see.
With something like that, where we're able to just like.
Well, you could be smart and still not care to learn. There's plenty of people like that, I'm sure.
Yeah.
You know, that are really smart, but they just have no motivation to learn. Like, it's just not what's important to them. I mean, there may be an argument to be made that there's a correlation between like a passion for learning and intellect. The smarter you get, like the more likely you are to want to pursue knowledge, because like that's the only thing that like really challenges you and like interests you. You know what I mean? But
this is making me think of some examples they were bringing up in the Emotional Intelligence book by Goleman, and how I think they've shorthanded it to EQ, sort of like IQ, and how EQ
emotional quotient.
It tends to. I think I'm pretty sure that they state that EQ tends to be a better predictor of who goes on to be more successful in life.
So what does that involve? Like how well you can control?
Yeah, your emotions.
How well you can control them?
Yeah.
So is there any
How well you're aware of your emotions, how well you deal with them.
Okay.
And I think it also...
What about how deeply you experience them?
I think that it'd fall under how you control them, because with the deepness of experience, that maybe it'll be later in the book. I haven't finished the book yet, but it's... What it sounds like to me when you mention the deepness of emotional experience, that kind of sounds like how much control you let an emotion have over you.
Well, the reason I ask is because I could see somebody who just like doesn't have any, or like very little, that's not really a desirable affect to have.
Yeah.
And yet it would they would appear to have high emotional intelligence.
And that's actually one of the things he gets at, especially in the very beginning of the book. That there's two ways that he goes about showing that. There's one where the people with the high IQ have like those who have high IQ but low EQ.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, those are the ones that tend to stay stagnant after whatever college or high school or whatever, because
they can't advance.
Yeah, they can't advance. They can't mentally. Something's going on with how they're interacting with emotions.
And that carries over probably to like social interaction.
Yeah, social interaction is a big part of the EQ. But also, the other character that they show is somebody who there are like lesions in the frontal lobe that affect their emotional intelligence or how they're able to interact with it, and it affects their decision making. What they've concluded, at least as far as I've read, is that emotional intelligence is a big part of decision making. It gives weight to what you put, to what is most important in your life.
Right. To what you value.
Yeah. So, like somebody who is missing that part of their brain, or that part of the brain is kind of damaged. He actually did a study on it, and like this guy was like top of his company or something, and after an accident he was still okay, he was still smart as hell, but he was hitting poverty. He was living in his parents' basement or something.
It's like navigating without a compass.
And his psychologist, or was it his
neurologist,
who's the person you talk to, therapist?
Yeah.
And the therapist pointed out this guy was like, he could point out all the different reasons why he had to do things in the day. It'd be an example as simple as like planning out when is the next time they should meet.
Yeah.
And it was hard as hell for him to make a decision, because he had all these reasons, and they were good reasons.
Yeah.
But emotional intelligence wasn't there to guide him, to tell him what was most important to be doing. Like, so
he couldn't choose.
He had too much reasons.
Yeah,
like we all possibly have so much reasons to do things, but there's certain things that actually affect us and how we go about choosing what needs to be done right now.
I see.
Yeah, it's super interesting. And this guy who hit rock bottom, he would, after the accident, wasn't able to make that distinction, because
you can come up with a reason for anything. Like real, you know what I mean? Like it's based on like what you want to what you care about.
But and according to the therapist, they were valid reasons too. Like these were coherent reasons, and but they just weren't able to come up with a time, because this guy he wasn't choosing.
Yeah, that's interesting. It's interesting too that when it comes to sociopaths, they don't have that problem. They're usually highly successful, because it's not that that guy just couldn't understand it anymore.
Yeah.
Like he lost that ability. Sociopaths understand it perfectly in others. They just don't experience it themselves.
Yeah.
So like they can easily they can easily be like, okay, if I was like that, if I was like these people, this is what I would have to do. And so they can do it.
Yeah.
Where that guy was just like, I have no idea. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah, and you can see the effects of that.
Yeah.
Like, not being able to comprehend emotion. Yeah, rock bottom, man.
That's crazy. And so was there a correlation between like high IQ and emotional intelligence? Like, are you more likely to have...
If you have both?
No, like, was there a correlation where, like, the higher your IQ, the more or less likely you are to have a high EQ, or was it totally...
I think...
Like, both, it could be both
for the
ways.
most part, they were trying to separate the two, but they did make some correlations, and I think people with a high IQ... Oh, they actually only touched it lightly. I think they just kind of played it off as a, like, this is common knowledge that people with high IQ are more than likely going to be successful in life.
Yeah, yeah.
But if you have a high EQ, it's more often than the ones with high IQ and low EQ.
Yeah, yeah.
And even those with high IQ and low EQ,
if it's too low, the high IQ doesn't compensate. If the EQ is too low, the high IQ won't help you.
Yeah.
That's interesting.
Yeah, it's super interesting. Because you can see the effects of that. Like, if you are able to read somebody's emotions or even understand the emotions within yourself, and those can be interchangeable, I feel like. Because if you understand yourself and you're just a person living in the world, observing the world, you're more than likely going to see what's happening within yourself happening in other people. And you have to make that connection. At least I feel like you should.
Yeah.
But maybe I should just finish the fucking book before I talk shit.
Yeah. And Goleman's the one who wrote the altered
traits. Yeah.
Altered traits.
Yeah. That one I have the audio book.
I didn't even know until I heard about that book. I didn't know that he was into like contemplative practice.
Yeah, it's because you heard of him on the podcast, right? With Sam Harris. And what was he talking about then?
Altered traits.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, they didn't even really touch on his emotional intelligence book. They had just mentioned...
It's crazy how much it connects, because
yeah.
I mean, just reading Altered Traits, or not reading it, but listening to it, like it makes sense that he would have been like down this road, and he has that other book on focus, and he would have been down that road too, because they all connect.
Yeah.
Like having some kind of control in your mind.
Did he... I know that you're not done with it yet, but does he mention anything about... Because you know how... Yeah.
Never on.
So, I know that Charles Murray had the book, The Bell Curve, which was the correlation between genetics and IQ. Is there a correlation between genetics and EQ? Does Goleman talk about that at all?
Yeah. I remember he brought up the bell curve.
Like, can you change EQ? Or are you born with it, essentially?
No, yeah, so that one... I mean, as far as the book is going, it's really... He's really just saying EQ is malleable.
He is.
Yeah. Like, with
sure that's
all the
what
experiments
altered
of...
traits.
Like, scientists observing interactions between babies and their mother, like EQ is something that's learned and is malleable. And
as an adult, though?
As an adult, I'm not sure. Oh, yeah, he does say that. Yeah, as an adult too, because even afterwards, I'm trying to think of, he brings up the subject of changing or heightening your EQ in adulthood especially as a young adult.
I know that I'm sure he thinks that the contemplative practice is a method of doing that.
Wait, did you say changing EQ or changing IQ?
EQ.
EQ in the young.
Yeah, I'm sure.
EQ in young adulthood. He
I'm sure he thinks. Yeah, sure.
It's going.
Oh, so I'm sure that that altered traits goes together with changing your EQ.
Yeah.
In adulthood, like through contemplative practice.
Yeah,
through meditation.
Well, it makes sense that, and that's why I say it all connects, because, like, when you are meditating, like, that's really you, like, not just reflecting, but also, like,
debugging.
Yeah, pretty much.
Like your own mind.
I was gonna ask you about how your meditation was going.
We'll get into it next time.
Yeah. We can. All right, so this is the end of the podcast. This shit keeps bugging out on us.
Still a little glitchy. We'll talk to you guys next time, though.
All right, peace.
Later. Thank you for listening. We hope you enjoyed it, and we hope to continue bringing you content.
And if you'd like to support us, you can find us on patreon.com/thepseudointellectuals or on Twitter @thepseudoint.